Kazayin Shvat. Yesterday was Tu B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Leila. Tu B'Shvat, Chamisha Asa B'Shvat. I don't know. Tu B'Shvat is not good. Chamisha Asa B'Shvat is good. I'm not sure exactly why, but this is. My kids came home from school. They're not allowed to say Tu B'Shvat. Just say Chamisha Asa B'Shvat. I just saw a Sikha from the Rebbe. The one they played last night in Shul. Where the Rebbe said, what happens to Chamisha Asa B'Shvat? Sap goes into the trees. The trees go to sleep in the wintertime. And in the spring they wake up. And in Eretz Yisrael, this is Tu B'Shvat, Shchei Shvat, Tu B'Shvat. In other words, it's earlier than it is here. They're closer to the equator. They have a shorter winter. And how do you celebrate Tu B'Shvat? By eating fruit. So the Rebbe says, I don't get it. Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan has to do with the very, very beginning of the cycle of a year of a tree. The tzraf, right? The way it's explained is a tree has life that's represented by sap, and this has to be sustained. It needs to be nourished. So you need to have water, you need to have carbon, you need to have whatever other compounds are necessary for the tree to sustain itself. You need to have sunlight. If it's winter and it becomes too expensive to continue the nourishing, the tree puts itself to sleep, hibernation basically, right? The energy of the tree that creates the engine, that allows for these processes to continue, stops. The leaves, which are the conductors of the sunlight, as we all know, fall off the tree, so the tree doesn't have to give life to anything. The tree is reduced to a lump of wood, basically, and it sits there till it warms up, and there's longer days, there's more sunlight, then it wakes back up. And the sap starts creeping back into the trees. That's what Lashon from Chazal. The sraf goes back up into the trees from the roots. And the Shchei Shvat, it starts. Tu B'Shvat, you see a symptom. You start seeing little blossoms. And this is the machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel that we all know, whether you should count the Shana Le'ilan from when the tree wakes up or from when you see evidence of the tree's awakeness. How do you celebrate Chamisha Asa B'Shvat? By eating fruit. Says the Rebbe, the fruit are not going to appear for 10 months. So you're celebrating Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan about something which is not at all yet, right? So the Rebbe gets himself into an uncomfortable position. Now, the Rebbe doesn't suggest that it's uncomfortable at all. I'm suggesting it's uncomfortable. He says, when a tree begins to show life, you celebrate it. But you don't celebrate the way the tree is now, you celebrate the way the tree is going to end. That it's going to produce paydas. Or to use the lashon that the Rebbe, this is the implication. If you know the sugya of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the Rebbe says Beis Shammai means basar keach, Beis Hillel means basar peil. Beis Shammai says you celebrate everything when it exists potentially. So the Shchei Shvat is the potential for life. Beis Hillel says you go basar peil, which is actual. When is there actual symptoms of life? On Chamisha Asa B'Shvat. So the Rebbe says Beis Shammai says basar keach, Beis Hillel says basar peil. But both the Beis Shammai and the Beis Hillel are the koyach and the payil of the koyach. The argument is only when you can celebrate the New Year for trees. There's no fruit yet. So Beis Hillel also talking about koyach. Beis Hillel is also talking about the potential. What's going to be in 10 months from now when you can have edible fruit. So the argument really is when a tree comes back to life. It's the beginning of its year. So you're commemorating Rosh Hashanah Le'ilan. You're honoring, it's much more than commemorating, it's a halacha l'maaseh. Chamisha Asa B'Shvat has many dinim. It's not just, we think of Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, a day that you eat, I don't know what, boxer. I always say we eat boxer, Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, to remember Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And that's a good reason. That's a very, very good reason. Or, one of my kids said to me yesterday, Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa. Rabbi Chanina ben Deisa was mistapik b'kaf charub mer Shabbos. That's what he lived on. Because why? Because you went outside, there were boxer trees near you picked your bucket, you filled it up and you ate it. In California, remember there were streets. In California there's streets that have fruit trees. But on each street you have one fruit tree the whole way. It's very beautiful. It was thought through. In other words, you don't have intermittent. You go down one street, all the fruits on that street are the same. Now, a lot of these fruits are inedible, especially when they grow on the street and they fall on the sidewalk. But charuv, you can first pick them up and put them in a bag. They fall there. The boxer, you pick them up, put them in your basket, take them and eat them. We never did it, but we used to see them. Yeah, they certainly make a very wonderful smell as they begin to go in the ways of the world, as it were. But okay, so Chamisha we pay this fruit. Eat Chamisha. The ikir is the Chamisha, the Shiva minim. Shenishtabcha b'hem Eretz Yisrael, grapes and dates, and there were dates and grapes and figs and pomegranates and olives. So the Rebbe says, you're celebrating Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon on Rosh Hashanah, but you're not celebrating Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon Rosh Hashanah the way the Elon looks on Rosh Hashanah, but what the Elon is going to look at the end of the year. You know, like you have Taka Benegeh to Rosh Hashanah Aleph Tishrei, that it says in the Pasuk, it is brought in Chassidus, Mereishis Hashanah Ad Achris Shana. Right? You know this, right? That Eretz Eini Ad Hashem Elokecha Ba Mereishis Hashanah Ad Achris Shana. The word Reishis in that Pasuk is missing an Aleph. If you write Reishis without an Aleph, it spells the word Tishrei. Reish, Shin, Yud, Taf is Tishrei. Another arrangement. Mereishis Hashanah from Tishrei till the end of the year. So the Gemara gives a different age. That the lack of an Aleph in the word Reishis is connected to the Basi Lagani of this year about the Reish and the Dalet. The Reish means poor. Mereishis Hashanah v'Ach Hashanah zog the Gemara kol Shana sheirasha b'tchalosa mesasheres b'sefer. A year that begins impoverished ends up enriched. And this is not just in those cases where the year begins impoverished, it's going to end rich. Every year begins impoverished. It begins with Bittul, with Kabbalah Seil, with Mesiras Nefesh, and that's why it ends up enriched. It's a Mereishis Hashanah. The year starts poor and it ends up rich. And the same is true. Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon, you're celebrating the beginning of the year. You're commemorating. And like I said before, you're not just celebrating, not just commemorating, you're fixing. Because Rosh Hashanah, Tu Mishvat, Chamisha Asa B'Shat has Poshet Nafka Minas La'alocha, whether you give Ma'aser Roni, you give Ma'aser Sheni, whether it's part of Shnas HaShemitah, it's not a part of Shnas HaShemitah, it's very serious halachas. It's not just Tamazeh, a day for little kids to eat fruit. This is halacha l'mais in many in Yonim and Yisrael even today. There's serious nafkaminis about Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, when the beginning of Shemitah, the end of Shemitah, the year after the Shemitah, and so on. It's a serious thing with many nafkaminis la'alocha l'mais b'peil, and you have to know the dinim and so on. But okay. But you celebrate by eating fruit. Why? Because that's the end. The end of the year, which starts at Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, is Peiros. So the Rebbe learned the lesson, the obvious lesson, right? And I'm going to repeat again the drei that I said before. The Rebbe didn't say it in this way, but it was sort of between the lines. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a kayach. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. You don't see anything yet. It's the head of the year. It's only the potential. Their argument is whether you look at the kayach the way it's in a state of kayach, or the kayach the way it's in a state of peil. The beginning of the year the way it's the potential of the year the way it's in a potential state, or the potential of the year the way it's in actual state. You could see that the year started, but it's only the beginning, and the end is going to be in Sukkot time. And after Sukkot, when you're going to collect the fruit, Chag HaAsif, and you celebrate it with Peiros, with fruit, because that's how a Yid is. Everything is, you start off with the potential when you're thinking about the actual. It's all about what's going to be later, what's going to be the future, what's going to be the promise. Okay, so yesterday Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, so we were Yetzer, we mentioned Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, Chas Hashem, so we were Yetzer. We had our Vart, I spoke about it on Friday as well. Now we're going to learn Tanya. Now I handed you a piece of paper. And so far there are enough pieces of paper for the people in attendance. I'm hoping that there will be more people than papers. But the Reile Zeyechesnit. This is from Pashas Nitzavim. We're going to begin Pasuk Yud Aleph. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Why am I reading this Pasuk Chumash with you? I'm reading this Pasuk Chumash because Pasuk Yud Aleph is the Pasuk on which the entire Sefer Tanya Kadisha is based. We're holding today in the Shadlechel the title page of the Tanya, which we read 2 weeks ago, and we're reading it again today. Right? Alter Rebbe says on the title page of Tanya, these are the words of the Alter Rebbe, Sefer L'Kuti Amorim. It's a sefer of a collection of sayings, Hanikra B'Shem Sefer Shal Beinanim, which is called by the name, the Book of Beinanim. Rabbi Miller in his new sefer calls it in-betweeners. I think it's a good, I don't know if it's such a word, but it's richtig. That's what a Beinanim is, he's in-betweener. But it's an in-betweener as a noun, not as a verb. Not I'm halfway between point A and point B. On a journey, this is where I am. This is my permanent place. I am the thing of in-between. It's a collection of ideas from scribes and from books. Books and from scribes. The holy ones who are above, their souls are in Gan Eden. Meyusad ala pasuk, founded on the pasuk, ki karev elecha adav meyet, that it is near to you the matter, which is Teireh Mitzvah, Yiddishkeit, very much, b'ficha u'b'lvavcha la'aseh, with your mouth and with your heart to do. And Alter Rebbe says, levayet heitiv, to explain properly, well, eichu karev meyet, how it is near ma'oid, very much, b'derech arucho kutzare, in a long, short way, be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach, with help of the Yevish. So last time we read the page, and I told you a lot of things about the design of the page and the details of the page, and also we spoke last week about the Derech Haruchu Ktsara. I mentioned to you that it's a Gemara in Chagiga, it's a Gemara in Eruvin, and it's a B'Shua B'Chananya. It's a Gemara talk. I told you that B'Shua B'Chananya said that there's a woman and a boy and a girl defeated me in an argument. The great Rabbi Yeshua, that the Mishnah says about B'Shua, Ashta Yeladate. Who was it? B'Shua B'Chananya, his Yiddish Mama. That's what the Mishnah says about B'Shua B'Chananya in Pirkei Avos. So Shubha Chananya says that one of the three who defeated him was a little boy, and this is the story about the two roads to the city. We learned it in Cheder, and we learned Tanya, but it's actually a Gemara Mefareshes. But okay, so last week I discussed a lot of details about the title page. I want to talk about the pasuk. It is near to you the matter, very much. Bilficha in your mouth, b'vavcha in your heart, la'aseh, to do. Which means, in the language of a Lubavitcher Chassid, in the language of Tanya, it means it's very near, it's very possible for a person to be a Beinin. It's a taich. Right? The Poshet, the taich of the Pasuk is very near to be a Beinin. Now, first of all, it's very, very important that we know the difference between the Hebrew word Karev and the Hebrew word Kal. They're not the same word. Karev means near and Kal means easy. Do you know that there's actually one place in Tanya where the Alter Rebbe actually uses the word kal? He talks about a certain avodah, and he says, for a person who has a moyach, because kadeh, this is kal. Chapter 17, you can look it up, the Alter Rebbe uses the word kal. Kal means easy. The pasuk doesn't say kal. The pasuk says kadeh. Kadeh doesn't mean easy, kadeh means possible. Kadeh means realistic, kadeh means near. But easy? Easy? The only things that are easy are the things that are meaningless. And again, in Tanya, you have in one instance where the Alter Rebbe himself uses the lashon kal, but b'derech klal, when he quotes this inyan, he speaks karev. So there's a pasuk in the Torah that suggests that being a Beinani is near. Now, you and I, and some of us, or most of us, or all of us, know that it ain't so. It's not that way at all. To be a Beinani is unbelievably involved. It's unbelievably difficult, yeah? You know, some of the great Chassidim, I read someplace that the Rebbe Sha'ar said about Rabbi Solneach, who was from the greatest Tmimim in Lubavitch, zeitenweise is a Beinani. On occasion, he's a Beinani. So the Rebbe Sha'ar said about Rabbi Solneach, zeitenweise, on occasion, what does that mean, zeitenweise is a Beinani? On occasion he's a Beinani. Other nicht. Okay, Pshat HaZog not Feiter. But Beinani is not easy at all. So when I teach this Perek, I like to give you the context. Because the context is very enlightening. It's not going to make it any easier. Yeah, but forgive me for using these words, it'll show you how the Eibishter thinks. You need to understand the perspective of the Eibishter to understand the form, the way this Pasuk says what it says. You know, if you and I were writing the pasuk, it would say something like this: this is going to be the most difficult thing in your life. You're never going to have a minute off. You're going to be working day and night and pushing yourself and breaking yourself to stay in form. But it's possible. That's what you and I would write. Yeah, sounds so benign. It sounds so simple. I mean, it's not simple at all. It's not. Teida's not simple. Teida's written simply, but it's not simple at all. But knowing the background of this pasuk enriches the pasuk very, very much. So we're now going to learn a Parsha Chumash. Okay? It's the Parsha Chumash. Avram Fried made a niggin out of all four of these psukim. Pasuk Yud Aleph until Pasuk Yud Dalet. The idea that he made a niggin of these four psukim is a pasuk. It's appropriate. Maybe he should have used a different trop. It's a freilich niggin. Okay, it's supposed to be a freilich niggin, yeah? But the idea that you make a niggin for these four psukim is richtig. It's richtig. So we're going to read a Parsha Chumash. Moshe Rabbeinu was talking to the Jewish people at the end of the Torah. It's mamish days before Moshe's Histalkus. Literally, days before Moshe Rabbeinu passes away. And Moshe Rabbeinu says as follows. Pasuk Yudalef. Ki ha-mitzvah hazois, this mitzvah, this commandment. Now there's so many different translations of the word mitzvah. There's a famous Ramban that says that mitzvah hazois means tshuva. But we're not going in the derech of the Ramban. We're going in the derech of Pshuta Shel Mikra. Ha-mitzvah hazois means in Yiddishkeit. This mitzvah, that means the way the 613 mitzvahs are one inyan. Ki ha-mitzvah hazois, this commandment, and again, we're translating a mitzvah hazois as what? As what? As all mitzvahs. We're not saying it means a particular mitzvah. It says Lashon Yochid, ki ha-mitzvah. So one of the nuances that the Mefarshim struggle with, if it means the whole of Yiddishkeit, it should say ha-mitzvahs. Where does it say ha-mitzvah? Correct? Look in Yudalit. Look in Rashi in Yudalit. Ki kodev elecha dover ha-teira nitna lecha b'ksav b'al peh. The whole Yiddishkeit is included in the word ha-mitzvah. That's how we're learning it. So let's continue now. We're reading inside the Chumash. Ha-mitzvah is this religion, this Yiddishkeit, in the language of the Rambam, Mamafusim, das ha-emes, this religion which is emes. Asher aneichi mitzavach hayem, that I am commanding you this day. And of course, any person that lives in Yechsidus knows that mitzavcha doesn't only mean to command. Mitzavcha means to connect. The mitzvah which the Eibishter connects us to him and him to us through. Zog der Pasuk lo neflesi. It is not wondrous. Mimcha from you. V'lo nechayka, nor is it far. He, she. Right? Lo nefles he mimcha. She is not wondrous from you. V'lo nechayka he, nor is she far. And then it continues. Leiva shamayim he, nor is she in the heaven. Leimed. Because if it would be in the heaven, you would have to say, Mi yale lanu hashamayim, who will ascend on our behalf into the heavens? V'yikacheh lanu, and take it to us. V'yashmiyeinu weis, and teach it to us. V'nasena, so we should be able to do it. V'loi me'evel hayami, nor is she across the sea, because if she were across the sea, leimed, you would have to say, Mi yavel lanu, who will cross over to the other side of the sea? El Eiver Hayam, to the other side of the sea. V'yikocheh halanu, will take it for us. V'yashmiyeinu oisah, and teach it to us. V'nasena, us will be able to do it. And then the Eibishter says, Ki korev elecha hadav miyed. This matter of the mitzvah hazois, the Torah mitzvahs, the Torah shenitnach b'ksav b'al peh, all of Yiddishkeit, which the Eibishter gave us, is near to you. Beficha in your mouth, or bevavcha in your heart, la say, very much. Beficha in your mouth, bevavcha in your heart, la say to do. You understand? I just translate the psukim. When you see what the Eibishter is thinking, you understand what the Eibishter is saying. Ki korev elecha hadava ma'od has a context. The context is that by the Eibishter there's something called the nefles. By the Eibishter there's something called rechoika. By the Eibishter there's something called Vashamayim, and by the Eibishter there's something called Me'evel Hayam. If the Eibishter made this mitzvah, the Eibishter made Yiddishkeit, Nifleis, or Recheika, or Vashamayim, or Me'evel Hayam, then we'd have to work hard. Right? What does he describe? If it was across the sea, you'd take a ship, go to the other side, get it, bring it back, and teach it. If it was in the heavens, Rashi said you have to make Nasis Sulamis, you have to make a ladder, climb up into the heavens, retrieve it, bring it down, and teach it. The first two things, the Torah doesn't even say what you would need to do. When it comes to the Chaykom, when it comes to the place, doesn't say Leira Chaykehi Leimer, Mi Yelech Lanu B'derech, because you don't even know what the path is. You know, if it's across the sea, you take a ship. If it's in the heaven, you take a ladder. If it's far away and what's wondrous, what do you take? What do you take? A rocket? How do you go to the place called Nefles? How do you go to the place called Rachayka and to bring it down and teach it? So we should do it. So the Eibishter says, I'm a nice guy. I'm sorry for speaking this way. Torah could be Nefles, Torah could be Rachayka, Torah could be Bashamayim, and Torah could be Me'evel Hayam. And it's not. Loi Nefles, Loi Rachayka, Loi Bashamayim, Loi Me'evel Hayam, Korev Elecha Hadova Miyed. This is the context. When you understand the context, the pasuk makes sense. Now, I'm not saying it makes sense that it's easier to understand how Beinani is midas kolod, every person can be a Beinani. But it does explain the perspective, kvayochel, of the Eibishter, when he gave us the Torah, and he says to you and me and to all of us who are pashut people with not big neshamas and great minds and great hearts and great potentials, this is the context. So now I'm going to explain it to you. This is pashut in Yonam from Kabbalah. Very simple. Yonam from Kabbalah. Nifleis means tainug. Rechoika means rot. Bashamayim means moichin. And me'ev eliyah means midas. Simple. In other words, the Eibishter says to a Yid, if I wanted, I could have made Yiddishkeit nefleis. That to serve the Eibishter the way the Eibishter wants, a Yid has to stand in a permanent condition of a tainug, of a delight in his connection to the Eibishter as it's expressed through the performance of the Yag Mitzvahs. Asayah Mitzvahs Leisat. The Eibishter said, if I wished, I could have made Teire mitzvahs that a Yid has to stand in a state of Rechoika. Rechoika means perpetual Mesiras Nefesh, constant Mesiras Nefesh. That every time you put on tefillin, it's Mesiras Nefesh. Every time you shake a lulav, it's Mesiras Nefesh. Every time you separate challah, it's Mesiras Nefesh. Every time you make kiddush, it's Mesiras Nefesh. Every time you make Havdalah, it's Mesiras Nefesh. But the later Chayki, if I wished, the Eibishter continues, I could have made Yiddishkeit Bashamayim. Bashamayim means any time a Yid does a mitzvah, he has to understand what he's doing. Leba Shamayim, I don't ask you for your mind. If the Eibishter wished, he could have made Bashamayim maybe Layam, across the sea. What does it mean across the sea? That any time a Yid does any mitzvah, has to be filled with Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, with feelings of love and awe, whatever emotions are needed to perform that mitzvah. And he says, Leba Shamayim, Leba Layam. So the Eibishter describes what we call in our culture Hanistaris, the mystery, the secret of Yiddishkeit. The Eibishter describes what we call in the Chabad culture Pnimius, the inner dimension, the beneath the surface. And he says, Loi, 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 loi. I don't want, I'm not asking this, I'm not asking this, I'm not asking this, I'm not asking this. I'm asking for this. And this is Korev. You understand? But there's a much more important understanding of this pasuk. There really is a much more important understanding of this pasuk. And the much more important understanding of this pasuk is you have to understand that all of these laws, lei minifleis and lei racheke and lei bashamayim and lei bevlayam, they're the madrege vavedes atzadikim. The law doesn't mean nobody has to do it. The law means not everybody has to do it. What I expect of everybody, atayra shenitna b'ksavo ba'al peh, that a Yid should be mekayim tayag mitzvahs in even of a nigles, is for everybody. The me'evel hayam and the bashamayim and the rechoika and the nefleis is not for no one. It's just not for everyone. But there are Yidden whose avodah consists dafke of me'evel hayam, dafke bashamayim, and dafke rechoika and dafke nefleis. This is called a tzaddik, because this is the difference between a beinani and a tzaddik. A beinani is defined by one thing, by what he does. To a great extent, we don't even care about motivation. To some extent, we do, but to a great extent, we don't even. You must understand the meaning of a deed. Yeah? When you say that a beinani is defined by what he does, you don't only mean by what a beinani does with his hands and his feet. You mean by what a beinani does with his hands and with his feet and with his mouth and with his thought. The definition of asiyeh in Torah is levushim. Machshava dibur amais. A beinani is defined by what he does, by what he says, and what he thinks. And the Eibishter says to the beinani, "Karev elach adav me'ed." What I am expecting to you, expecting of every Jew, without any exception, is this: machshava dibur amais. Right? The simple. When we went to Cheder, how they touch beficha means dibur, levavcha means machshava, and lasayse means ma'aseh. And you of course immediately have two questions. Question number one is, why is it written in order? It should be b'vavcha, which means thought, beficha, which means speech, and lasayse, which means action. And the second question is, it shouldn't say b'vavcha, it should say b'machshavtecha. Nachon? Because the whole pshat of a beinani is that he's not expecting your heart. And there's a very, very deep explanation in Chassidus, which is really pshat in Tanya, that the word la'asoisai, the last word in this pasuk, la'asoisai, includes all three things. Machshava dibur amaisa. Beficha b'vavcha means something else. Lasoise, to do means to do with your body, to do with your mouth, and to do with your thought. So a Beinani is expected to deliver action. That's all the Eibishter expects. And when you look at what the Eibishter expects of a tzaddik, that Hetman, you have a sense of Korah. They say a story in the name of Rabbi Leibel Gronos that in the winter of Tafshin and Beis, the winter of 1991-92, the Rebbe said to Leibel, and I don't know the context, I don't understand the statement, but these are the words that we heard this then. Mention Hobben zu Mitainis, Favasich Mona Zeifu. People are complaining to me, how can I make so many demands? And the Rebbe said, for mir mont men noch mehr. For me, even more is expected. This is the story. This is the quote. And like I said, we've heard this many times, and we heard it then. Mention Hobben zu Mitainis, Favasich Mona Zeifu. People are complaining to me why I make so many demands. And he answered, for mir mont men noch mehr. Whatever I'm demanding of you, from me, even more is demanded. Now, you could explain that in two ways. Number one, more is expected from the Rebbe by us, or more is expected by the Rebbe by whoever the Rebbe's boss is. I don't know what that is, but it ain't me. It's nicht uns. Yeah. In other words, you think it's hard on you, it's harder on me. Mir mont men noch mehr. So that's what the parasha is saying. There's all kinds of Yidden. And of course, when you say all kinds of Yidden, this is not a popularity contest. It's not a plurality game. When you speak about Yidden, one group of Yidden, right? The Rebbe's famous quote, the pasuk: Roshechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Sheitrechem, Kelish Yisrael, Tapchem, Neshechem, Gerecha, Cheitevetzach, Hashem. It's 10 groups, 10 chalokim. Yeah, Roshechem is how many? Roshechem is how many? One man. Shiftechem is how many? Technically, 12. Every Shevet has one nasi. Yeah. Sheitrechem, policemen are noch mered. Yeah. Koil Sheichem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem. Ziknechem means the Chachomim. Zeh shekon Chachma. Also a lot of Rabbonim, Rosh Yeshiva, Talmidichem, Bnei Teira. Yeah. Koil Yisrael means all the rest of the men. That's what it means. Koil Yisrael means all the rest of the men. Tapcha means the children. The Sheichem means the women. Now, what about a woman who's a Chachoma? So she's included in Ziknechem. Yeah, the opposite of Nesheichem is Koil Yisrael, all the men and all the women. So if you think about it, you have 10 groups. Some of those groups are very lonely. One man in a group, a few people in a group. And other groups is everybody else. So the Torah is not nispol when you divide people up into 10 groups, and one of them is millions and the other one is 5. Because the division isn't based. This is not America. It's not a democracy, Make people happy. This is real delineation. You go where you belong. And if Roshechem is 1, so it's 1. If Sheitrechem is 12, Shiftechem is 12, so it's 12. Sheitrechem is Ziknechem, you go where you belong. Kailish Yisrael means all the rest of the men. And I'm going to use the Lashon which the Rambam uses, Amei Ha'aretz. That's what a man is, and Am Ha'aretz. There's male Amaratzim, and then there's female Amaratzim. And don't be insulted, that's most people are simple. Posh the prosta mensch. So when you divide Yidden into groups, it's not divided up based on numbers, it's divided based on level. The group to which all Yidden belong, all, but you should know, says the Eibishter, there's a madrega of Me'evel Hayam, across the sea. It's a madrega of a tzaddik. A tzaddik she'eni gomer, a not perfect tzaddik, but a tzaddik. Then there's a madrega called Vashamayim, which is even a bigger tzaddik. How many people do you think are in that group? Very few. Yeah? In our generations, who knows if any? But it's a delineation, it's a category. Then you have a tzaddik who's noch aggressive tzaddik, and he's the madrega of Rachoita. And then even a bigger tzaddik is the madrega of Nefleis. There's Nefleis, a tzaddik gomer, I'd like to believe it. Why? It works, the symmetry, the drosha, the speech I'm giving is geschmacken, if we say that Nefleis is a tzaddik gomer. But that's what's going on here. Nefleis and Recheika and Bashamayim, Me'evel Hayam are madregas and Avedis Hashem. It's not poetry. Abish is not being poetic. There's different madregas of tzaddik. And the Abish that says to all of us, to the Koilish Yisrael, to the Tapchem, the Sheichem, Lei Nefleis, Lei Recheika, Lei Bashamayim, Lei Me'evel Hayam, Karev Elecha Adav Ameyeh B'ficha B'Lacha Seisei. What I expect of you is what you can give. And what you can give me is la'seis, is machshava dibur ha'maaseh. And what you cannot give, I don't expect. I expect it from somebody else. There's a Yid Tzaddik, he's in the madrega of Evel Yamim, Bashamayim, and Echeke, the place, whatever he's capable of doing, he has to deliver. But you have to deliver what you're capable of doing. And that's the sequence of this pasuk. When you learn the Tanya, and you come across this pasuk, knowing where the pasuk comes from and how the pasuk exists in the big picture is very, very important. Like I said before, it's not going to make being a Beinoni any easier, but it will give you a context of Payachal how the Eibushter thinks. You have in Tanya chapter 35 and in other places where the Alter Rebbe bemoans, literally bemoans, protests Nebuch being a Beinoni. Yeah, you have such stickle in Tanya. Lama asa deshem kocha lega larik. You're going to spend your whole life looking for something and you're never going to find it. Why would the Eibushter do such a thing? Alter Rebbe's words. And Alter Rebbe didn't have these problems. Alter Rebbe knew Alter Rebbe found it all. He had it all. He's complaining for us. And Alter Rebbe gives a teret. But the point, the teret's not there yet. The point is, the Eibushter is speaking to a Yid and he's saying, I have different standards for different people. There's a madrega of the place, which is for special tzaddikim. Madrega of Recheke, which is also special tzaddikim, but not so special. And then there's Bashamayim, and then there's Mevel Hayam, and then there's Elecha. Everybody. And Kolev Elecha, Adav Me'ed Beficha B'Vavcha L'Seiseh. The expectation that the Eibushter has of everybody is L'Seiseh. Because this we could do, and what we can do, we must do. Okay, so let's talk about this. And again, I'm going to go off using a different language. The language I'm about to use, we already had in the Agdama of Sefer Tanya Kedisha, which we learned a few weeks ago. And it's mentioned also in the beginning of Perek Mem Dal, chapter 44, the beginning of the Perek. Alter Rebbe brings this in the Tanya, Sefer Shal Beinanim. And that is that Yiddishkeit consists of Hanistaras and Haniglas. Judaism has two dimensions. Hanigles, the revealed dimension, and Hanistaras means the secret dimension, the mysterious dimension. In modern America, in the post-hippie world of American tumultkeit and pizar nefesh and bilbul and lack of development, it's called what's collective and what is personal. Things that we share with other people versus what is personal, right? In the America of today, everything is personal. Yeah? Except when you're sitting on an airplane. Personal. Don't tell me how to worship God. I have my personal relationship with Eibushter. Yeah, personal. So in Yiddishkeit, you have personal, you have collective. What's collective? The mitzvah shenitne lecha b'ksav b'al peh. But the Rebbe always says, Lashon teira achas hakulana. If Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillin have one letter more than your tefillin, Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillin are puzzle. Period. End of story. Moshe Rabbeinu is a big tzaddik, and he sits down to his Pesach Seder, and he eats a kazayis and a half of matzah. He has not done a mitzvah and a half. Eating more than one kazayis of matzah, two kazayis of matzah adds nothing. Why? This is the shir. And the shir is shaval l'chol nefesh. Everybody has the same lulav, and the same kiddush, and the same Shabbos, and the same kosher, and the same tefillin, and the same esrig, and everything is the same. It's all the same. The Tayag mitzvahs which the Eibushter gave us, which are written in Shulchan Aruch, based on Teresh B'Ksav and Teresh B'Al Peh, are everybody the same. Alaglaich. That's called a niglas. The niglas means the level of Judaism which is not personal, it's shared. And when you speak about Yiddishkeit being niglas, and you say that we all share it, there's two levels. In the Pasuk it says, Ve'ha nigles. Ve'ha nigles. So it says in Svarim, it says in Chassidus, that Ve'ha nigles has to be read. Vav, Hey, nigles. It's three words. Vav is the letter Vav of the Eibushter's name. K is the second K of the Eibushter's name. Niglas. The two oisis of the Eibushter's name, Vav and K, are revealed. What is this? Vav goes on Teda. And the second Hey goes on Mitzvahs, B'Poyel. So niglas means the Teda that we learned that's all the same for all of us, which goes on the Shulchan Aruch. And the Gemara, nigla the Teda. The reason rabbis can argue is because they could speak to each other. The reason the rabbis can speak to each other because they understand each other. The reason they understand each other because they're speaking the same language. That's called niglas. And it consists of Teda mitzvahs. And then there's nistaris. the mystery, the secret of Yiddishkeit. Now, of course, the secret of Yiddishkeit has to do with Sisre Deiraisa, the secret Torah. But here it's much more subtle, because it's taka personal. In other words, the secret Torah has to do with the secret of Yiddish and Neshama. Your emotions, your intellect, your feelings, your mind, your will, and your Neshama, your Pnimius. When it comes to the Neshama, we say there's no two alike. When it comes to the soul, there's no two alike. All Jews are exactly the same. When it comes to the Neshama, all of us are carbon copies of one another. We're exactly the same. Pardon me. I'm wrong. When it comes to Neshama, no two of us are alike. We have nothing in common with one another. Every Yid is an absolutely distinct and separate creation. Two Yidden feel the Eibush, that's two different Ahavas. 1,000,000 Yidden feel the Eibush, that's 1,000,000 different Ahavas. When you're putting on tefillin, it's the same tefillin. When you learn the Shulchan Aruch about tefillin, it's the same Shulchan Aruch about tefillin. When you're having an experience of Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, no two are alike, because it's an inyan pnimi. It's a spiritual thing. It's called Nista, Nistares. And Nistares in this Parsha is stacked as 4 levels. There's probably a lot more than 4 levels, but in the Psukim there's 4 Madregas. The lowest Madrega is Me'evel Yam, across the sea. The sea, for those who don't know, means Malchus. The Yam is Malchus, and Yam is Malchus is Levushim. Across the sea means the Midas, the emotions. A tzaddik is a human being who's busy with his feelings, but not like we are busy with our feelings. I'm so busy thinking about myself, I can't get over myself, and I am justified in hating everybody I ever met that's older than me because I have to deal with my feelings. That's shagas. It's a disease, it's an illness. Maybe it's taka an illness, but an illness is an illness, yeah? We're talking about mastering emotions. Who controls their emotions? Imagine controlling your feelings. Not only controlling your feelings and you don't let them take you over. Controlling your feelings means directing your feelings. Make yourself feel certain things. It's an awesome thought. How many people control their emotions? Our emotions control us. A tzaddik lives in the realm of nistadis. That's his job. It's his world. That's his struggle. Tzaddikim are just like us in the niglis. They have to do the same mitzvahs. They have to learn the same Torah. And if they miss a mitzvah, they stop learning Torah. As the Frierdiker once said, Verte tzli duruf ois tzaddik. If you don't do mitzvahs and learn Torah, you become ois tzaddik. You stop being a tzaddik. But that's not a tzaddik struggle. That's my struggle. That's your struggle. The tzaddik doesn't struggle with those things. What does the tzaddik struggle with? Maybe layam. A tzaddik is a yid who's expected by the Eibush to have full mastery over his emotions, over his feelings, over his heart. Which means to say, a feeling that's not appropriate he shouldn't feel, and a feeling that is appropriate he should feel. And not only feel it for 1 minute, but feel it all the time. The realm of a tzaddik is on the lowest level of tzaddik. It's the lowest madrega of tzaddik. She'eni gomor is regesh halev, that he has to have avas Hashem and yiras Hashem, a love of God and fear of God. Not just while he's davening, but all day long. He gets up in the morning, he puts fuel in his furnace, but nagan tzatog is vadim. His whole life is warm. When you have no yetzer hara, you don't have any reason to become cooled off, you understand? So a tzaddik warms himself up and he remains warm. And this is the avoid of a tzaddik. Tzaddikim's avoid us to be mevada their midas, that their feelings for their Eibishter should be pure and should be precise and should be perfect. Which means not only is a tzaddik expected not to feel negative emotions, and not only is a tzaddik expected to feel appropriate emotions, he has to feel appropriate emotions in an appropriate way. And I'll explain to you what that means. Sometimes somebody is so emotional about the Eibishter that all the people around him are criticized by his passion. A person is very, very excited. The excitement that he has spills over to those around him in a way that's not appropriate. That's tzaras. That's no good. The tzaddik has to have all of these emotions. He has to have all these emotions in the kind of way that the people around him are not burned by it. So tzaddikim have work, but a different kind of work. Their struggle is not to do a mitzvah, not to do an aveda. That they do, they have to do. But that's not their struggle. This was either given to them by matana, or they graduated from it, or it's a combination of both. Their struggle is midas, to refine their emotions, to control their emotions, to direct their emotions, and to manage their emotions and to be precise. Now what happens to a tzaddik who has mastered it successfully? He's achieved shleimus on the level of midas. He's a master of his midas. We think he's finished. Anech ketog, bashamayim. He goes to the next level. The tzaddik has to master his mind. And mastering the mind is a weird thing. You know why? Because the mind is cold. Managing the heart, you understand how complicated it is, yeah? Why is it hard to manage your mind? Your mind doesn't have any passion. Your mind doesn't have any tendencies. What's called managing your mind? What's managing your mind? Managing your mind means that something which is heipech hatayra doesn't make sense to you. Not something which is heipech hatayra, you could show how it's wrong. Something which heipech hatayra leikt sich but nit in seichel. Imagine changing your brain in the kind of a way that is something which is consistent with Torah and Ratzon Elyon is logical, and something which is against the Torah Ratzon Elyon is late. Your brain cannot tolerate. You can't understand. It doesn't make sense. Why can't you understand it? It's logical. Logic is logic, and the Teretz is that's called Bir HaMoichin. Bir HaMoichin, refining the intellect of a person, which is the madrega of a bigger tzaddik, and even this is tzaddik v'ra loy. Yeah. Is that not only does he have to be mavad in his feelings and his heart and his emotions, that his emotions should be managed and controlled and should be expressed in precisely the correct way, so that there's no spillage, that there's no unique achitzonim from his midas shabalev. He's mavad his mayach. His brain has to be so transformed that he should have a godly mind. A godly mind means that what's true in seichel elaki, something which is true in the seichel of the Eibush that he understands, and something which is heipech seichel elaki, he just doesn't understand. So just imagine a person knows what kind of struggle is that. We can understand that's not tzaddik. These are fantastic ideas. They're fantastic ideas. Yeah, they're interesting to discuss. They're wonderful material for a shir. Yeah, on a Haley morning in the middle of Shvat. Yeah. Oh, but so relate to these ideas practically. This is a madrega for not tzaddik. Tzaddikim are working just like you and I are working, just working on different things. The klolos, a tzaddik is working on what's called anastaris, and specifically the tzaddik is working on a certain madrege. And in our parsha, there's 4 madreges. The lowest madrege is Bevel Hayam, the second madrege is Vashamayim, the third madrege is Rechoike. Now you should know that in my Maimorah and Chassidus, when they talk about the Rechoike and Pella, there's contradictions. Some Maimorim say that Pella is lower than Rechoike, other Maimorim say that Pella is higher than Rechoike. But Pella and Rachik are both in Keser. The Sha'ar is only whether Pella is Chitzenius like Keser and Rachik is Primius like Keser, or the Faket. Now, if you didn't appreciate the Kabbalah lesson I just gave you, don't worry about it, okay? But because in the Maimorim there are contradictions, some Maimorim say that the Rachik is the lower Madrege and Pella is the higher Madrege. Some Maimorim say that Pella is the lower Madrege and Rachik is the higher Madrege. Because of the sequence of Psukim, at least here we're going to assume that Rachik is lower than Pella. Rachik is the madrig of will, Ratzon. And what does it mean, Ratzon? Ratzon means a tzaddik whose birur is his Mesiras Nefesh. Will means Mesiras Nefesh. There are tzaddikim in this world whose job it is to do every inyan in Yiddishkeit, whether they're learning Torah, they're doing mitzvahs, on a madrig of Mesiras Nefesh. How do you eat a kazayas matzah with Mesiras Nefesh? How do you do that? How do you sit in your house on Shabbos of Chamisha Asar B'Shvat and eat a peri to commemorate and to relive Chamisha Asar B'Shvat on a Madrega Mesiras Nefesh? How do you do that? Of course, we have no idea how you do it. But there's such an inyan. There are tzaddikim that every single minute of their lives is in a state of Mesiras Nefesh. Every mitzvah that they do, every Torah that they learn, is all Mesiras Nefesh. In these actions, they're giving away their entire will to the Eibishter, which is what Mesiras Nefesh means, Mesiras Haratzon. So like I'm saying, it's very difficult to understand what this is. But we all understand what it means, will. We all understand what it means that our will, we have our own will. The idea that our will should be giving away to the Eibishter, to the point of total sacrifice, is an awesome idea. But that your will should be given away to the Eibishter not only in a moment of Kiddush Hashem, but in daily life, in the simple, everyday, in Yom Yiddishkeit, is beyond our imagination, our fathom, passion. And then of course the highest madrege is niflois. And niflois we're going to translate, like I said, in some of my Maimorah it says that niflois is higher than Achayka, and that means tainuk. In every Yid's neshama there's a lakus, there's a godly level. And the godly level experiences the Eibishter's expression on a level that's higher than reason. I don't understand what the Eibishter says. I experience the pleasure that the Eibishter gets from the Torah mitzvahs that he gave us. And there are tzaddikim, and again, we're going to assume probably incorrectly, but we're going to the Madrega in the place is Atzadik Gomer. There's no more Madregas. The place is called Ava B'Tanugim. A Yid who's constantly standing in a state of delighting, experiencing a Tainug in a Lakus. So all of these lois are lav dafke, you understand? All these lois, later place, later chayka, later shpaim, the Rebbe is not saying, the Tanya is not saying these things don't matter. They matter very much. If they didn't matter, they would be written. But they don't matter for you. They matter for tzaddik. And this madregas of tzaddikim. What is relevant for every person? So now, forgive me for saying something so foolish and silly. If you're the Eibishter, you understand how really? If you could see the Torah from Moshe's point of view, and you understand where Moshe Rabbeinu was standing, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Ki mitzvah zeh t'shanechi mitzav chayim leida fleis, leida chek, leida shamayim, leida meivelayam." How disappointed was Moshe Rabbeinu when he said these words? Because what's Moshe Rabbeinu thinking as he's saying these words? Moshe Rabbeinu is thinking that the Eibush is going to create a generation of Yidden who have nothing to do with Madregas Tzaddik and nothing to do with the higher Madregas of Tzaddik. They don't even have to do with the lowest Madrega of Tzaddik. In other words, in engaging with the Eibush, there's so many levels. And all of those levels are called Nestaris, the secret level, the mysterious level, the levels of the Tzaddik. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Jewish people of his time, and he says to all of history, that's special. And therefore it's not the basic standard, the basic expectation. The basic expectation is so it's not easy to be a Beinani. But when you look at it from through this Pasha, through the prism of this Pasha, you understand what Moshe is saying and how he's saying and why he's saying. Moshe says the Eibishter gave us so much. And he expects of each person to bring to the table what he's capable of. And what he's not capable of, the Eibush doesn't expect. But we're all capable of, and therefore all expected to deliver, is we learned the Pasha Chumash, that's all we did. We learned the Pasha Chumash, right? That's what we did, learned the Pasha Chumash. Okay, so let me finish with this. And the Mitzvah Hashem next Sunday, Belined, that I'm planning on being here, we're going to stop Perek Aleph. We're done with the introduction, stop Perek Aleph. But I want to say this, that on this pasuk, there's the simple touch. And the simple touch, it is near to you, the matter. That means Teira and Mitzvahs, the Mitzvah. Ma'oid very much, Beficha means speech, Bevavcha means thought, and Laseisa means action. This is when we were children, this is how we learned. When the Rebbe made the 12 psukim, Marechazal, one of the 12 psukim, Marechazal is this pasuk, and the Rebbe explained it. A child should know that he can be a Yid, he can do all the mitzvahs of the Eibishter. But in Chassidus they bring a deeper taich, and it's apparent that this deeper taich is Pshat and Tanya. It's very, very realistic for a Yid to learn Torah. Beficha means to learn Torah with your mouth. But we don't mean Stamazay learning Torah, we learn Pnimiyas HaTorah, Chassidus. How much Chassidus do you have to learn? B'vacha. That you should have feelings for the Eibishter in your heart. But that's not Madregas Tzaddik. Why? Because the level of B'vacha that you need is only enough to motivate the Laseise. And the word Laseise means what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you do. The Eibishter says to you, you could learn enough Chassidus, to have enough feelings in your heart to control yourself on all three levels of thought, speech, and deed, machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh, and they're all included in the word Laseise.